Looks like we have an endpoint, a RESTful controller that has been mapped to this URL pattern, which is returning this data, which has been hard-coded on the server right here, right? This has been hard-coded, and it has been mapped to this URL pattern, which matches this URL pattern. So what we need to do is that we need to go back to the JavaScript client, right, and replace this constant URL, this hard-coded, and we don't really need it anymore. Right? We don't want that. Instead, what we'd like to be able to do is to go programmatically fetch the content from the server and then pass it to the render users, but from the server, right, as opposed to this hard-coded content. So let's do that. Right. So because we're going to be coding in JavaScript, Spring Tool Suite is not very friendly with JavaScript, so I'm going to go back to my WebStorm. Right? I notice that we removed the array here. All right, so what we're going to do is that we're going to encapsulate, we're going to put all our data access to the server. Right? We're not going to do it here in the component. Instead, we're going to put it in a dedicated directory, right, called services. Right? And in here, we're going to create a class, an object that's going to allow us to interact with the server. Right? We're going to call it user.service.client.javascript. Right? Okay, so in here we're going to declare a function, a class per se, right? A function, we're going to call it user admin. Oh, I'm sorry, user service, and it's a function. And this is how you create classes in JavaScript, right? It's a function. It's a plain old function. Just so that to create an instance of this class, you need to say new user service, and then it creates an instance of this object. Now what we put in here is up to us. Right? What we're going to put in here is a couple functions. In particular, we want to create a function that was going to allow us to execute this invoke this find all users, basically. Right? We want to in here, right, have a function called the same name, maybe, function find all users, right? That basically what it does is going to try and execute this function here on the server. This function on the browser client, executing halfway across the world, is going to try and hit using a URL very much like this URL here, right? It's going to use this URL somehow. It's going to take that URL and somehow it's going to try and hit this server listening at that URL, right? And the server, running halfway across the world, and is going to return this static list of users. All right, so let's do that. How can we do that? All right, so find all users, right? It's basically what it's going to do here is it's going to what we want find all users to do is to go and fetch this data from this URL. And indeed, JavaScript has a function just for that. It's called fetch. Right? Fetch is going to take as argument a URL from where you want to return, go and fetch the data. Right? And so this is going to return whatever that fetch. Okay. Right. So now this is a function that lives inside of a class. So it's going to be an instance function. We need to expose it to the rest of the world. And the way we do that is as follows. We're going to say this dot find this is equal to this function here. So we're declaring a local variable on the class which is pointing or holding a reference to this function here, so that we're exposing it through the instance of the service. Okay. All right. So we're going to, in the HTML, we're going to need this JavaScript. So let's go back to the HTML, load it. Let's load this this URL. Actually, I think we did. Isn't this it? Yeah. Services, user service. Is that it? Yeah, it's that one. We already did that. Right. Okay. We did that. Since we've loaded, here we should be able to just load, instantiate that variable, user service. We should be able to just instantiate it. Let's say new user service. There it is, user service. So here in main, we should be able to just say, hey, user service, find me all users, okay? And we should be able to set it to a variable users, and then pass it along to users. Unfortunately, this is not going to work, right? It'd be too easy. Instead, let's take a look at this, right? Let's run this. Let's go back to our user. Let's go back. Let's refresh. Right? It did not work as expected. If we inspect, let's see what happened. Let's see what happened. We go to the network and refresh. Notice that indeed we were able to send a fetch, right? And the URL is indeed 8080 users. If we click on this, we can see the headers are correct. We went to the right URL. The server said it was okay, right? It is get, okay? And the preview, this is the response from the server. The server is indeed responding with the data that we're expecting. So the data made it from the server all the way to the client, to the browser. So we have it on the browser. It's just something went wrong, right? So let's step through this a little bit. If we go to this client here, right? Let's see this user that comes back. Let's put a breakpoint right here. Right, so if we refresh, let's see at this users. Notice that it's not actually the array we would have expected. Right? Instead, it's this weird thing called promise. Okay, so it's not the array we were expecting, even though somehow it's being printed. So this is an explanation about promises, right? So let's talk about promises in the next video.